Good evening and welcome. So nice to see so many of you here tonight. This is an opportunity to discuss the opportunity gap in preschool education tonight. So we're delighted to have you, and I would love to introduce our moderator, Sharon Broussard, who is formerly the chief editorial writer at The Plain Dealer, where she covered a bevy of topics, including education, suburban politics, and social services for the opinion page. She has had an interest in preschool since she sent her firstborn to the Music Settlement preschool 18 years ago. And just a small aside, she's also in my book club, so it's really special that she's here tonight. And speaking of books, I'd like to give a shout out to Shannon Titus, who is the Youth Services Manager here at the library. So wave again. Yes, so thank you for being here. And also I'd like to, if there are any public officials in the audience, if you would stand and say hello. Hi, Mayor. Hi, Jeff. Welcome. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sharon Broussard. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, one and all. Thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it. Let me introduce our panelists. They probably, if I counted out the number of years that they have had in early childhood education, or probably get to something like 500 or something like that. So I have what you would call a very, very deep bench here. So I'll start with Dr. Marla Robinson. She's currently the Chief Academic Officer for Shaker Public Schools, responsible for executing the academic vision of the school district, but she's held many other positions in Shaker schools, so you might recognize her from some of her other positions. She started her career as an elementary school teacher in Decatur. Is that how they pronounce it out there? Illinois. And rose steadily through the ranks in that school system before joining Shaker in 2011. Okay. Oh, boy. Beth Price. You might have seen Beth over the years. She's the executive director of the Early Childhood Enrichment Center that's in Shaker Heights. She's been in early childhood education for 40 years, starting as an assistant teacher for 2.5-year-olds in Louisville, Kentucky. She has been involved in for-profit, not-for-profit, corporate, Head Start, and employer-based child care. So just about every kind of child care setting you could think of. So it's pretty amazing. Next person is Billie Osborne Fears. She's the founding executive director of Starting Point for Child Care and Early Education, which is the community-based child care, early education resource and referral agency that serves Cuyahoga, Ashtabula, Cuyahoga, and Lake counties. And basically, in brief, I met Billie many years ago. I was looking for child care, and I called Starting Point. She has like a premier referral service that will help you kind of poke through the weeds there and find a good service. She received a Master's of Social Science Administration degree from Case Western Reserve, and she has a Bachelor of Science from Bowling Green State University. And finally, we have Dr. Rebekah Dorman. She is a developmental psychologist who is the director of Invest in Children and the Cuyahoga County Office of Early Childhood. She has devoted her career to helping children and families who face adversity through programs, research, and advocacy. Her special interest is the early childhood period because of its impact on the rest of the lifespan. And when I first started covering this field, there was a sense that, moms and dads can just stay home with the babies and they'll teach them their ABCs and numbers and off they'll go to school and everything will be okay. Can you guys, any one of you kind of talk about why preschool is so important in the 2020s and beyond?
Let me take that. We can all take that one. Preschool education is extremely important for children today. First of all, socially and emotionally, which is really what we focus on is really the basis for children to be able to learn. They need to feel good about themselves, and they need to be able to express what they need for others. So they need to be able to tell another child, I don't like it when you hit me, or well, you know, we can play together, let's do this. They have to be able to be socially adept as well as feel good about themselves. With that base, then children will learn how to do everything else. It all comes in together. So most of our programs start with the social emotional piece and then go into the more academic piece. I recently received some statistics from Case Western Reserve University that talked about high quality care, children who have been in care for at least 8 months in their 3 to 4-year-old lives, and have gone on to take the kindergarten readiness assessment. And just as an example, our center, we had 90% of our children were ready for language and literacy. They were there, they were ready. And even though we concentrate on the other end of it, it's really, really important, and they do get those other skills. So early care and education, having good teachers, having high quality, we're very diverse in our center. We have children who are on child care subsidy. We have children who both parents are doctors. So we go across all economic diversity. We're also racially diverse, as well as ethically diverse. We have about 20 different countries represented at any one time. So we really cut across all that diversity, and it really shows that children learn through by being in school, number one. Number two, having teachers who are prepared, because that's a biggie, and having a wide range of experiences.
Can I just interrupt
Yeah.
a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Thank you. Not sure how that's... Okay. To add, sort of take a broader brush to that question, there has been research now that documents, especially for kids who are coming from less advantaged backgrounds, that a high-quality early care and education experience helps level the playing field for them. And the research has been, I think, a game changer for us, because it demonstrates that that it's an investment that really is not just socially just, it also is a smart thing to do from an economic perspective, and in terms of both public and private investments in helping kids become productive members of the community. So preschool now has a whole bunch of economists, Nobel Prize-winning economists, who now champion it simply because it makes good sense for us to help kids when they're young. We have the research to show the impact it has on them as adults. And it's considered really the best use of public dollars if you put it up against any other program that governments invest in.
As someone who has spent most of my career in the public school system, I have to say that there's a strong correlation between early educational experiences and success in the school setting. So our moderator talked about how it used to be. Nowadays, the expectations for our students around learning and social and emotional are different than they used to be. So a really high quality preschool setting really does set them up for success in the K-12 arena. So that, that's, and not to say that staying home is not okay. It's all in what you do with their time and how you enrich them. And when you look at the importance of language development and also interacting with others, so that's one thing. Even, at home, there may be siblings, there may not be siblings, but it's not the same as being in a room with other young people your age and having experiences that force you to grow and develop because that's part of what happens. So it is a little different, but also I can say, thinking about when I went to kindergarten, which is a really long time ago, and what kindergarten is like now and what the expectations are for the children as far as, to be able to self-moderate and to interact, it's different. And so the best thing that we can do to set them up for success in the K through 12 setting is high-quality preschool.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. And yet, despite that, there are barriers to getting your child into high-quality preschool. Financial is one of the barriers. I imagine some parents might say transportation because you've got to get your kid there. If you have a very difficult child, you might need a special kind of preschool, trauma-informed education or something along those lines. But to you guys, what are some of the major barriers for parents accessing high-quality preschool? And also, someone at least take on the question of what exactly is high quality to you? I'm sure it's not watching videos all day or anything like that. So.
Absolutely not. High-quality preschool, there are several things that we know from the research. And the most important indicator really rests with the teacher. We know that if they are educated in early childhood development and understand how children grow and develop, what they need to know first before they're able to do X, that children will do quite well. So a quality early childhood program or preschool program would have qualified staff who are trained in early childhood development. They would have Lord-child staff ratios, and what that means is that there would be one teacher for maybe 10 to 12 preschoolers. We like 10, don't we, Beth? Because if you think about it, I like to give you 10 kids, and they're all 3. And they're going to be with you all day long, okay? So you really need someone that is qualified to actually know how to work with a large number of children that are all the same age. We know that they need to have curriculum that is research-based. The teacher needs to know how to conduct assessments to determine what the child knows, and then be able to develop a lesson plan on how to provide activities that will address the areas that the child needs more help in. There are lots of things that determine a high-quality program. Family engagement is very, very important. Are the families engaged in their little ones' education or in that program? But those are the major indicators of high-quality preschool. And in our state, we're very fortunate that we have what's known as Step Up to Quality, which is a quality rating and improvement system. And it is based on research. The indicators for that rating system is based on the indicators, and many of those indicators are some of the things I spoke to you about just a few minutes ago. And so in Ohio, the scale goes from a 1-star to a 5-star. 5-star is the highest quality. What we define as high quality in the state of Ohio and in our county here are 3, 4, and 5-star rated programs. We consider them to be high quality. So many of you, when you're driving or riding the bus or walking, you may see a banner across someone's porch, or you may see a yard sign and it says Step Up to Quality. They are red, white, and blue, and they have stars on them. And you can tell whether it's a 3-star, 1-star, 5-star by the number of stars that are colored. So now I know when you go home, I guarantee you probably will see a banner, and now you'll know what it really means. But we're very fortunate to know what high quality care is and have a system to measure it. It is the state that actually does the rating of the programs. Agencies like Starting Point, we work with programs to get them ready to become rated and provide training and technical support and whatever we can provide to the early childhood programs to put them in a position to be rated. What was the first part of that question?
Oh, the other part was access to what are some of the barriers to access high-quality pre-K?
Now, we hear transportation, we hear that quite a bit. But when we conduct focus groups or actually conduct surveys, the data does not come back that transportation is a real issue. I think the issue really centers around the time in which the early childhood program is open and when that program closes. Because many families are telling us that they have a car or they have someone that can pick their child up and drop their child off. So when we're in groups with our colleagues, transportation normally surfaces. But when we actually talk with parents in focus groups or survey them, it does not come up as the major issue. Cost
Cost.
is the number one barrier.
Is that, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Is that true for Shaker Heights as well? Number one barrier being cost?
Well, we have,
Oh, you might want to take that mic
yes,
back.
that would be helpful. We do offer scholarships based on qualification for reduced cost or free meals. So we do have that option, and we really work hard, our team in the Learning and Teaching Department, to do what we can to help a family, even if it's a payment plan. You know, we need people to do what they can, and we will help them. So we try not to let that be a sole barrier. But, you know, we do have costs, and quality teachers costs, quality learning environments cost. So, you know, that's how we've dealt with it. And we do offer full day, half day. And so we work with the families to try not to have that be an issue. But in the real world, we do have costs that we need to pay.
I think Billie, are you
Can I-
adding? Beth?
Yeah, just let me add to that. As I said, we do take children who are on child care subsidy. So those are children who are, families are low income, but they are either going to school or they are working. And the county does pay, the state pays for part of their child care, and they pay a copay or however that works. They don't pay us as much as we would get from a private pay individual, but we feel that it's important that everybody have that access to quality early care and education. So we really try to make it for everybody. The other thing that helps us is we are part of the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program, which is part of the county. And the county gives scholarships to families who are up to 400% of poverty. So they pay a percentage of their tuition, which helps some of those families who may not be able to afford it. It gives them another opportunity to be able to afford quality early care and education. And to me, the most important thing is I think every child should be able to have quality early care and education. I don't think it should just be for those who can afford it, but I believe every child should be able to have it.
I think to add to what my two colleagues here have said, the families who really fall between the cracks, believe it or not, are families whose incomes are over 150% of poverty. It is the middle class families that really have a hard time paying for child care. Because for low-income families, there are child care subsidies, we have public preschool programs, and we have Head Start. But for middle-class families, they don't qualify for any type of a subsidy. And the cost of a quality early learning program could cover a college tuition. But usually when I have this conversation with folks, I ask folks to really take a look at these children are in these programs sometimes between 8 and 10 hours a day. And if you were to look at the daily rate and divide that by 8 or 10 hours and you look at what it costs per hour, it does not cost that much per hour. But to a family who has to pay it and they're paying for it for a whole week and a whole month, it really adds up. So it really, the families that really are suffering the most in regards to being able to afford quality childcare are not low-income families. They are mainly middle-income families. In Shaker, you have over 800 children who are receiving publicly funded childcare right now in your childcare programs.
Yeah, I took a look at some of the statistics on the average cost of high-quality preschool, and it's $8,600. Obviously, there are some cities like in New York where, you know, they're paying $20,000 a year and that kind of stuff. But yeah, $8,600 a year is pretty high for most parents, considering all their other bills that they have. So I also took a look and saw that West Virginia has universal pre-K. And that some other states are heading that way. Dayton and Cincinnati have passed taxes, have increased their taxes, so that way they can afford, I guess they're on the road to universal pre-K. Anything like that happening throughout Ohio, or at least in Cuyahoga County?
I need to make a correction. There are not 800 children receiving publicly funded childcare.
Oh.
There are over 800 children that are in a Step Up to Quality rated program in Shaker. Really, there are only 71.
Preschoolers who are on subsidy. Okay. So we are really very lucky that now about 13 years ago in our community, leaders, public and private, came together, and at that time there was a younger man named David Weiss who was in the corporate sector, who helped chair one of the community committees along with a man named Mark Freeman, who used to be the superintendent of Shaker, to create our universal pre-K program. The main committee, yes. So since that time, thousands of children have benefited from the program. It is not truly universal in the sense that that we have capacity for every child in the county who might want to attend, but we're now at about 4,300 seats. It started as a pilot program with 1,000 seats, so we have grown. The program is, though, any child, excuse me, is able to attend one of our 67 sites. We have 2 in Shaker, as you heard. Early Childhood Enrichment Center is one, Hannah Perkins is another, and then throughout the county there are 65 other sites. It is, you heard from Billie, what is high quality according to the state. Excuse me, in order to apply to become a UPK site in Cuyahoga County, you have to be 3 to 5 stars, and then you also have to agree to adhere to even higher standards that we have in our program. So we believe we are the gold standard of quality, and our research does bear it out as we compared, Case Western Reserve, who are our evaluators, did a very rigorous study recently, and you'll probably see something in the paper soon. We're about to sit down with Plain Dealer reporters to talk about this more. But we looked at kids who got what we consider the full dose of our program, which is 18 months, so from 3 to 5, and compared children who had that dosage in a UPK, one of our UPK sites, to children who attended one of the high-quality preschools. And what we saw was that the kids coming out of the UPK sites did perform considerably better overall on the kindergarten readiness assessment, both in terms of the language and literacy part of the assessment as well as the social foundations part. So we feel very confident that we are delivering the gold standard of quality. There are pockets of programs across the state. There's not a statewide program. So back to your question. Unlike other states, Ohio has sort of ceded that to local communities. There, about 15 years ago, actually, when the UPK pilot was being created in this community, there was a strong expectation that the state was going to create a statewide program, and we in Cuyahoga County were going to create the model that they would then take, and it would happen statewide. There were a couple things that happened, a change in political leadership and an economic downturn. and that has never materialized, and we've never been close to that again. But what has happened in the interim was that our program has grown, a program in Dayton has emerged, in Cincinnati, Toledo's creating a program now, Columbus. So it's really sort of fallen to each of the urban centers to create their own version of pre-K programs. We talk to each other, their differences, and we were the first. And we think we're the best.
Well, one of the issues in pre-K is about teacher retention and teacher, hiring and retention. Teachers are paid very low in this field, so low that many of them qualify for public assistance, which makes it really hard to build a very strong industry where people want to go into preschool and want to do their best. That's not so true for the public school system because they're unionized and, very high quality, so they don't have that issue. But all the other ones will have some kind of problem about this. I'm just kind of curious as to what can be done.
Well, what can be done? We would need to have more money to be able to pay teachers a salary that is equal to what our teachers are paid in the schools. And we like to think that we've provided a pipeline over the years because we've, under the Office of Early Childhood and Invest in Children, we've been very fortunate to be able to have a college scholarship program known as TEACH. And so a lot of folks have gotten credentials and degrees, and we have created a career lattice or career pipeline, which you need in any field. But we really, our intentions was that folks would get their degrees and stay in the programs that they were working in. But that has not panned out. But until we're able to pay wages that are livable wages, number one, and then number two, be able to provide benefits and be able to compete with school districts. And it's not just Shaker, it's all of the school districts. We see this in all of our communities. We won't be able to really deal with retention of qualified people in our field. What are we doing about it? And I'll let Rebekah, if she wants to, talk a little bit about it. But we have a committee, a joint partnership here where we're looking at how can we come up with some policies, and she's going to come up with all of the money, her and Katie Kelly. But we really are looking at that issue, and I'll let her
Well, do you want
talk about the committee.
Oh, well, so a couple things. What we're doing on a smaller scale right now through the Universal Pre-K sites, they get quality dollars from us, and this is all, just to be clear, county dollars that come from the Health and Human Services levy, which is on the ballot in March. So the sites are able to, and I'll let Beth tell you how she uses it, but the sites are able to choose with our approval how to use those dollars, but they're very often used to help boost salaries of teachers. When you ask teachers what, we've done focus groups as part of this committee, what do you need? What would be your dream? The dream is $40,000 a year. That's the dream that brings people to tears at the thought of that, which school districts are able to do usually, and is, a pipe dream in a community-based setting. So what we're doing, though, is we are gathering data right now to really document what salaries are, and no one's really solved this problem yet. Different municipalities are trying different things. The city of San Francisco, where the average salary is $40,000, but it doesn't go as far as in Cleveland. It's still, the city just started a stipend program so that they're giving out $4,000 to early childhood educators to try and help them have a living wage in San Francisco. I don't know that $44,000 does it in San Francisco, but I think, it's a very piecemeal approach now. We need a federal approach. I'm happy that actually there are some candidates who are talking about that. But Beth, you can.
Let me go on? Okay. So in our program, one of the other things that UPK and Step Up look for is what kind of benefits do you give your teachers? So to be higher rated, you have to give your teachers more benefits. What has happened, let me talk about what Billie has said first, because she said it very nicely, but we have teachers who are on Teach Scholarships. They go through our program, they have to have a year commitment after they finish. They have that year commitment, and then they're off to the public schools because they've got their bachelor's in early childhood education, and they can be paid a whole lot more in the public school systems than we can pay them. We try to give teachers as many benefits as we can. You know, our program and some of the money that we use from our UPK services is to pay our teachers a little bit higher salary and to give them more benefits. So and also, just to give you a little background, ECEC was founded in 1974 by some very forward-thinking Shaker women who knew that Shaker Heights needed quality early care and education. And so when they set it up, they tried to set it up as a school. So shorter hours, more benefits, all of those things. Unfortunately, when the downturn came in the economy, we had to increase the hours and change the way. We are a full day, full year program, by the way. So we're open from 7 to 6, Monday through Friday, all year round, except we're closed the week between Christmas and New Year's and a couple of other days. But otherwise, we're a full day, full year program. So we try to give our teachers a little bit more money. We try to give them a little bit more benefits. So we do help with health insurance a little bit. We have a simple IRA that they can contribute to and that we contribute to. They have paid days off. A lot of early childhood programs, there are no paid days off. You know, you're off, you're done. You know, you don't get paid. We don't send our teachers home when we reach ratios. We have them stay because we think of them as professionals. By being able to do that, our program, I was just looking at it, we have probably 3/4 of our teachers have been there 5 years or more, which is totally unheard of in the early childhood setting. But it's just because we can do those things, and we can do those things because of the Health and Human Services Levy and UPK. I'm just going to put my little plug in there. But I think it's really important that we try to give our teachers more than what they do get. And you see in a lot of programs that where there's a high turnover of teachers, there's a high turnover of administrators because people are not getting a living wage or the stress is too much.
Beth, could you just briefly talk about, you mentioned sending teachers home because you don't meet ratios. Could you
Right. Well, so for instance, state ratios for, I got to think about it, for 3-year-olds is 12 to 1. So if we have 12 students to every 1 teacher. So a lot of programs, if you hit that 11th child and you have 2 teachers in the classroom, 1 is sent home and they don't get paid. So that's the way that's how child care centers control their costs, because obviously personnel is the most expensive thing in any business, and so they control their costs by being able to send people home. We don't do that, and we are also very lucky and somewhat unusual as we have 3 teachers. We try to have 3 teachers in every classroom. So we have, you talk about 1 to 10, we try to have 19 children with 3 teachers for our preschool, and we do mixed age grouping, so it's 3 to 5-year-olds.
Is this one of the struggles of a young profession? I'm just kind of thinking of school teachers, you know, they're not getting paid so low that they have to go on public assistance. Generally speaking, maybe in some rural areas in Ohio, but generally not. So what's the genesis of the fact that early childhood educators aren't respected enough that they get the funding that they should get?
I don't know that it's not that they're respected enough. I think it's because we are relying on families to pay that amount. And so we don't get the money from the state where, you know, we can afford it. We can only ask our parents and our families to pay so much. You know, we're talking about it being a mortgage payment. You know, so, you know, you can't really keep going back to the well because the well goes dry. So I think to me, that's the reason. I may be wrong,
No, that's one of the reasons. But on the policy side, if our country really valued early childhood education and really valued its children, because in many other countries, early childhood is not something that is, if you can afford it, yeah, an afterthought. It's a main thought. But our country has not, we're not there. We are not investing the way that we should be investing in young children in the United States. It took 25 years to get a little bitty teeny weeny policy on child care, and we like to call it early education in the United States of America, and that was a child care and development block grant. It has grown a little bit, but it is nowhere near what it should be. Also, we don't have enough money for public preschool or Head Start. There's not a value there, and until we are able to convince our legislators to value it and to increase it and to fully fund it, because parents cannot carry the full cost of quality child care. Families cannot do that, but they should have a right, and their children have a right to attend a quality early learning program. So we have to do more work in some of our advocacy. We want to pay attention to who's supporting early childhood education, who's supporting child care, who's talking about pre-K for all. I mean, we really have to talk about it, and for the most part, in the state of Ohio, and our state legislators need to do better, much better. But it has been in the past a bipartisan issue, both on the federal level and on the state level. But they need to increase that pot.
I'll be very fast, it's here.
The one thing everyone needs to know is the research on brain development is so clear that this is the time when investing in building brains will reap the greatest rewards. And if you look at where public dollars go, it's exactly the opposite of what it should be. So the least amount of public money is put in during the early childhood period when it could have the biggest effect, and then the dollars rise as you age. And that's exactly opposite of what it should be. So I don't want to take money away from anyone, but we just need to look at the research and recognize that this is a huge missed opportunity for children and for our country.
So much was said. I think our country's lack of recognition of the importance of education overall is really a part of the total problem when you look at the variances over the nation of educational experiences of children. So the way services are provided for the very young is really just one more aspect of how we don't really do a good job as a country of making education a priority. I can say that in Shaker, we do not have a lot of teacher turnover in our programs. We are fortunate because we have different structures than these entities that our preschool teachers and our preschool program is a small part of a whole. Many of our teachers in the preschool in our district overall have master's degrees. So it's just a little bit of a different setting, and then Shaker is attractive, and so people want to come. So we don't have a lot of turnover, but also we're not running, what'd you say, 37, 42 programs or whatever. So our program is small. It's not the same scale as far as trying to keep teachers and transportation and families and budget. It's just a little bit of a different setting. But we are very fortunate that we are able to give our teachers excellent packages. They get the same packages as other teachers because they are Shaker teachers. They're in a union. And so, but it should be that way across the board. And it's not just the early childhood issues, really our country not prioritizing the things that it should, in my opinion.
Great.
I know when I spoke with Beth in an early phone call, she talked to me a little bit about trauma-informed preschool and how important that is these days. Could you give people the landscape of that and why it's so important? I think we think of trauma-informed education for older youngsters, but not necessarily for little ones who are 3 and 4 and 5.
So when you think about trauma-informed care, it's a child who lives in chaos, and when they go into a preschool setting, they don't know how to react to things that are patterned. So that when you live in chaos, you seek chaos. When you live in patterns, you seek patterns. And so children who live in chaos, when they come into an early childhood program, are still looking for that chaos. And this can be, we think about, okay, well, who does this affect? Well, there are children who don't know where they're going every night when they leave the center. They don't know where they're going to sleep, who they're going home with, what's going to happen that night. But there's also children who go home, but mom and dad are on the phone. They're handed an iPad or a telephone. They're not, they don't have that pattern either because they're not being talked to and they're not getting all of the things that they need. So trauma-informed care really goes across all socioeconomic boundaries. It looks different when you're in a one end or the other, but it's the same. So we have more children now in our programs than haven't done a survey, but I'm guessing across the board, that have behavioral and emotional issues because they don't know how to socialize. And when I talked about the emotional social end of early childhood, that was a big piece of that. Because if you're going home and you're handed a phone or you're put in front of the TV or you're handed an iPad, you're not getting that socialization. You're not getting that emotional support. You don't. I mean, I remember when my kids were young, we sat down at the table and we talked about your day, and that's what we did at dinner. I don't think there's a whole lot of people who sit down for dinner together anymore as a family. And so where are you getting that support? So that's kind of where the trauma-informed care is. So when we do, part of what's expected is that we have family-style eating so that children are all sitting down at the table together and there's conversation going on. And you talk about what's going on in the classroom or what's going on in your day, or even talk about the food that you're eating. What color is this? Or, what's your favorite fruit? But those are all things that we have to do now in an early childhood setting that aren't being done at home.
I think also when we hear the term trauma-informed, which we are also working on in Shaker, we often think of very horrific things happening to children, but when you look at trauma for a young child, it may not be something horrific. It could just even be the separation of the parents or whatever. They are unable to process what is going on with them. So when you say trauma, you just think, oh, something really bad. It's really not defined that way, and because of that definition, it's a wide range of children suffering these challenges.
We do have a special needs child care program in our county, and basically any licensed child care program, licensed by ODJFS, program in Cuyahoga County are eligible to participate in it. We contract with agencies that are experts in early childhood mental health, an agency who works with children who have physical and developmental delays, and we work with our county board of health, the nurses for children who have medical concerns. So those organizations go into the early childhood programs on behalf of a child that has been identified, and they provide technical assistance for the teacher and the administrator, or whoever the administrator wants that technical assistance to be provided to. It could be the cook, or it could be the bus driver, because some children, interact with the cook and the bus driver, and everybody needs to be able to know what Johnny or Sally needs. And then we also provide equipment. If they need equipment in order to stay in their early childhood program, we will provide equipment, both medical equipment, or if they need a wheelchair, or if they need other kinds of materials that are prone for social emotional development. And where does the money come from? And it is funded excuse me, by the Office of Early Childhood Invest in Children, and it comes from the Health and Human Services levy.
There we go again. Okay, I'm going to turn to some questions that I've received here. Here's a really good one. Could any panel member speak to the importance of parental voice, especially in light of Ogbu's study in Shaker Heights? And Ogbu's study about 30 years ago is still being talked about, some of the failures that he thought Shaker Heights had here. How can all parents' voices be engaged, beginning with preschool?
An integral part of the universal pre-K model is family engagement. So that we use what's called the Epstein model. Joyce Epstein is at Johns Hopkins, and she spelled out 6 types of family engagement. That I think the most important part of the model for me, and this is all coordinated through Starting Point and their staff, is that there is an action team that is made up of parents, staff, and community members at each site. And Beth can tell you how it operates. But we believe that is the group then that plans how will the family engagement work for that particular site. So we think parent voice is crucial in deciding how parents should, how should parents be engaged in that site, and it looks different across all of our sites. Something new, we're building on that now with a 2-generation approach, which is even, I think up until now, the way that we have seen parent engagement has been the parents in support of their child's growth and development, which is absolutely essential, but we don't want to forget the parents' needs and aspirations as well. So we are now looking at whether parents of our UPK kids want to continue education and employment, and we're creating pathways for them. We're piloting some programs with an organization called Towards Employment to try and really meet the needs of the whole family. So we believe it's crucial, and I'll let Beth tell you how it plays out.
So we have a group that we've always had, which is our Parents as Partners group, and our Parents as Partners meets monthly, and part of that group is our action team. So our Parents as Partners, as well as administrators, and then other people from the community come in, and we look at what do we want for our kids? How do we want this to play out? And so we have things like one of the activities that I love the most is we do My Guy and I. So to get the dads or the father figures involved, we have a Sunday where they come and they do activities with their child. And so that gets the guys involved, and we don't say my dad because not every child has a dad. So, and some children may bring one person, and then we had one that brought a whole entourage of like 7 one year. It really depends. But that's one of the things. We tried to do a financial literacy program as a 2-gen approach. So, how do you go about getting a mortgage, and what kind of things do you do with that? So, you look at all of those things together and try to do things, and then networking. We're looking at doing a movie night where not only for the kids, but then the parents have an opportunity to network and to meet each other and talk to each other and have some parent time, adult time. So, that's the way we get our parent involvement. And then, they also let us know, what do you think we need to be doing in our program? How can we improve what we're doing? How can we improve meeting your needs as well as meeting the needs of your children?
And in Shaker, can parents just call you or email you?
Oh, no, they can call Dr. Herbrook. She's right there.
Wave your hand. Okay.
So since you mentioned Ogbu's work, I would just say that as a district, we are really working to increase the consistency of our parental involvement. We have some very involved parents. We have some parents where they struggle and scrape just to get to Shaker. They send their baby to us, and then they go on. So we have a really wide range of population that we're serving. One thing the district did a few years ago is we established a family and community engagement department. And actually, Keith Langford has been talking about the Epstein model, and it's something we're really trying to infused throughout. Because early on, like the early childhood years, kindergarten, parents are pretty excited. You know, I'm sending my child, I really want to know what's going on. And then, of course, by middle school, the child doesn't want you there. And then at high school, they just want you to buy them things. So we really are working on helping those who have not been engaged with us engage with us in a more deep manner. And that's actually something that's in our strategic plan that we're working on, which will be released in March. But also related to that, indirectly, our district also passed an educational equity policy that would encourage anyone to get on shaker.org and look at it, because I'm very proud of it, and I'm very proud of what it says that we believe that we should do as a community. Not a lot of districts have the policy. It's on shaker.org. There's a little button that says commitment to equity. So that really talks about getting to the point where the outcomes that we see for our children are not connected to their family status, which is huge.
Yeah.
And disrupting patterns that have existed in the past as far as outcomes for children. So that's some of the work we're doing, which we have to engage parents in that. We can't do that alone, and we have to gain their trust so they can work with us, because we can't do it by ourselves.
Right, okay. I think I need to go back to Rebekah. Got some questions here that I believe you can answer. What's the percentage of preschoolers in Cuyahoga County who have had quality preschool experience? I guess that's 3 stars and above, right?
Yes. So let me find that answer. When we talk about preschool, we tend to talk about those that are licensed by the state ODJFS, Job and Family Services. Those are community-based child care centers. And then by ODE, those are school district sites, as well as, for example, Hannah Perkins happens to also be ODE licensed. So within the ODJFS sites, there are approximately 17,000 seats. We can't do a count of kids, actually, but of seats, and most of those seats are full in high quality, and about 4,500 seats in the ODE, the Department of Ed licensed preschools in the county.
Okay, so
Pardon?
so what percentage are we talking about?
And out of how many youngsters? There are about 23,000 preschoolers in the county.
Okay. And so the majority of them are not in high-quality preschool, right?
We're getting,
Can I say?
we're getting closer. I mean, what's happening is there's a July 1st deadline coming up that seemed like really far away when it was put into statute, that in order to take public funds from the state of Ohio, whether you're a district or whether you're getting kids on subsidy, you have to be rated and step up to quality. So as of July 1st, if you're a parent who's got a subsidy, you can only take it to a rated center. 5 years from July 1st, 2025, you will only be able to get public funding if you're high quality. So starting point has been doing yeoman's work here and working really hard. They are charged with all the ODJFS work, getting those sites to high quality. So it's been quite a task.
And,
Those are those banners you're going to look for, the red,
right,
white, and blue banners with the stars on it.
right. And the percentage of preschoolers in the city of Cleveland who are in quality pre-K?
Oh, we're very close to, we're getting very close to 50%.
Close to, all right, so about
We're
half.
not there yet, but we're
Okay.
getting very close.
All right, and for you, the percentage of preschoolers in Shaker Heights who have had quality preschool experience?
Oh, I should know that because I.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
it's-
that's yours.
Yeah,
A lot.
there's a lot.
Currently, I didn't do the percentage, but it's 606.
606.
606 out of 878 preschoolers that are enrolled in some type of preschool setting.
Okay,
So you're talking 3 to 5
yeah,
stars rated at.
okay, great. Someone had a question about cooperative preschools. They say they are or were affordable and parents had to be engaged, but where do they fit in? Do they have to be rated? by the way?
If they receive a public subsidy, they will have to get rated.
Okay.
But if they are not receiving a public subsidy, they're not required to be rated.
Okay.
And that's for public, community childcare also.
In Shaker, you're in pretty good shape for Step Up to Quality. All of your Ohio Department of Job and Family Services programs that receive publicly funded child care are rated with the exception of 2 child care centers. All of your family child care homes are rated, so you're in really good shape. And those 2 child care centers that are not rated, they are working diligently to become rated. Matter of fact, there's staff from one of the centers that are right now at starting point, and they are finishing up their child development associate training. So the 2 programs are working hard to be rated, or they will not be able to get paid from the state on July 1st if they're not rated.
Okay. All right. This person says, I've heard of a study that suggests the benefit of early childhood education is lost if the elementary school that kids attend later on is not of high quality. And I've seen this too, but they want to know, is that true? Where you go after preschool can determine whether or not preschool really is sticky, so to speak?
You've done
What do you guys?
I think when you look at that, there is so much research just on the quality of the teacher consecutively for the child. So I'm not looking preschool specific, but if you look in general, a child has a fabulous teacher, let's say 3 years in a row. And in the next couple of years, if the teacher is not as strong, the child is going to regress. So in general, I would say yes, because it's cumulative. You're building on what was put there. And so if you don't, if you're building a house and for a couple of years you just stop putting on bricks, it's not going to grow. So that makes sense, totally makes sense.
Rebekah?
So it's true, preschool, high quality, even a very high quality preschool education is not an inoculation against everything else that can happen to you. It's a good foundation, and the longitudinal studies do show that what is sticky, in Sharon's words, are sort of executive function abilities. So what you find in adults who've had a high quality experience is, especially coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, less likely to be involved in criminal justice system, more likely to graduate high school, less likely to be pregnant as a teenager. So a lot of the sort of the things that you hope people are going to avoid so they can become, productive members of the community and avoid some challenges. That does seem to, you can trace that back to a high quality early care and education experience. So it's true that some of the academic things have not held up, but executive functioning and things that you talked about, Beth, what you get out of preschool are very important also to look over. And what we hope is that we'll send a child from a high quality preschool to a high quality school system, of course. But I think on the one hand, we don't want to over-promise what early childhood can do and say that it's, like I said, it's not an inoculation, but it is a foundation that is crucial. And we talk about building a house. So if you have a shaky foundation, you can have the best walls, but it's going to fall down. So you need that foundation, and then hopefully the quality experiences will follow.
I understand Shaker is expanding its PreK. What efforts are being made to facilitate enrollment of high needs, low income, and minority students?
So we are really looking at the various parts of our community and the demographics of the various parts of our community and reaching out specifically and differently depending on who the population is. So we know that we would never just rely on the people who find us and learn about us. So we are using our family and community engagement person who is very involved in the community to help us reach families who don't necessarily engage with us, and we are actually monitoring the response to our application process to look for diversity around experience, family constellation, race, income. So we're working on that through the process rather than saying, oh, wow, only this type of family found us. So we're doing some strategic outreach for that.
All right. I think the first part of this has been answered.